Sanje Chodang Choche Chanjo Badu Nani Japso Aji Chujen Drola Benjen Sanje Sanje Chodang Chanjo Badu Nani Daji Chujen Drola Benjen Sanje Chodang Chanjo Badu Nani Japso Daji Chujen Drola Benjen Sanje Dayantan Gaden Gaden Parasum Bodhisattva Dayantan Gaden Parasum Gaden Dayantan Gaden Parasum Gaden Bodhisattva Ola so Simja Tamjega to Topjalana Machiva Sanje Komar Moja Chineja Tobacha Dice the Embe Chanjo Sam Labjana Twitch the Nav Langwala Shingo, Shimala Tugo, Tubala Tujish Manoaj Gotu, Gasu Baba, then gets a jumbo Shiwala Sebe, Junju within the Jeshi Timini, some check. What else?
And let's set our motivation. That is a motivation to do whatever we possibly can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. Knowing that to attain such a state, I must perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. To perfect those trainings in turn, I need to have a very good understanding of what they are about. And to gain that understanding, I need to be able to rely upon a non-mistaken source for that information. And thus it is that I am here this morning to listen to an explanation of some of the verses of the great text, the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, as composed by Master Shantideva.
What did it What did it say? Takanja Namju Nation Chenetan, Rangi Tungi, Nankala, more than get Tijaza Lama Yubala, Namba, Tabjala, Tuja Chumba, Tomba Shaja to set up. And then they get Tombati, set up a Tombati, Joe Omka, Tomba Armor, Tuma Home. What did it go by?
So we begin by visualizing in the space in front our own, in actual fact, our own root guru, but in the aspect of the great Munindra Shakyamuni Buddha, and who is greatly compassionate and skilled in means. He is marked by the 3 syllables, Om at the crown, A at the throat, and Hung at the heart center.
To go home, we say, Padu member tune, and Shingrajan never, and Ishiba only Java Genta, and Ishiba, the castle only Java Genta, and Ishiba the Lama to be over number Genta, only one could chill Lama children, and because the weekend tickets, most of my sometimes.
And that from that Hung at the heart center, light rays emanate, going out into the pure realms, inviting back the wisdom beings and the empowering deities. The wisdom beings dissolve into the central figure, and the empowering deities confer the nectar of empowerment, some of which then overflows at the crown, spontaneously producing the figure of Akshobhya.
And Ranga Tower to and it said Sozo Pama Tsengama, Tingama, Toma Mebane, Rangla Tingi Java, Pama Tigatanza, Masama Meba, you, some such Donna, and Kamsungi, Dory Ruga Simja, that and Masama Meba, and Ranga Tower to you, some to what in a commercial.
All around us, we visualize our parents of this life, the one previous to that, and previous to that, and previous to that, going back to beginningless time until we have the notion of all kind mother sentient beings since beginningless time, and indeed all of those who are resident within the 3 realms of existence, and they are all surrounding us.
And the Lama to be on Boge, Kusum to get Yundan Ten Shibangane, and the Taretaba, Ishigitaba, Munduga Tabalaso, Randa Ranga Tagajibe, Majisim Jatam, and it did it, and was what Tombala, and to what did you some such?
And then through our contemplation of the qualities of the great Munindra Shakyamuni Buddha, we cultivate the pure faith of conviction and manifest faith in our viewing of the central figure.
And Teresa, and to Tomba de Lama Tuba Umbote, Naranzo Tonda Tuike, Naranzo Tonda Lamla Lab, Naranzo Tonda Umbasoba Sanjava Imbache, that Rasha Simja Tam Chigating Watrin, Tea, Tone, and the Lama Tuba Umbu Jesu Tangage.
And that knowing also that it is for our sake that the Buddha developed the mind of enlightenment, for our sake thereafter trained in the path, and for our sake achieved a state of full and complete enlightenment. And so we are no doubt that we, all sentient beings here, are under the protection looked after by Shakyamuni Buddha.
And what the Ranga Tawani was some jet that Tanjana, and Dewa Dujan, Teapon, Miduba Tunga, the Tunga Chicken, chicken and yonting, what a Randa Kokuna, Dewa in Bachi, Shebeton, and Semjel Nijichi.
And so we are aware also that all of the sentient beings are all around us, are so desirous of happiness and don't want any suffering, yet they are bereft of the happiness they so want, and they are inundated by the suffering that they do not want. And so that feelings of compassion spontaneously arise in us.
Dewa Deva Juda Jaba Tena Chimoro, Temba Shoche, Temba Chuche, Temba Tagachi, Deda General Lamatu, and Chingila to Comasha, Sunday the Data Dunga, the Dunga Juda Jawa Chena, Chimoro, Jawa Chuche, Jawa Shoche, Jawa Tagachi, Deda General Lamatu, and Chingila to so. Sunday the Data Dunga Miva Dewata Mijana Chimoro, Minjawa Chuche, Minjawa Shoche, Minjawa Tagachi, Deda General Lamatu, and Chingila to so Comasha.
How wonderful. If all sentient beings had happiness and the causes of happiness, may that be the case. May I be the one to do this for them. Oh, Guru Deity, please bless me to make this so. How wonderful if all sentient beings were free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May this be the case. I will see to it that it is the case. Oh, Guru Deity, please bless me to make this so. How wonderful if all sentient beings had the happiness that knows no suffering and the excellent bliss of liberation. May this be the case. I will see to it that it is the case. O Guru Deity, please bless me to be able to make this so.
Today, you are there. Niri Chadan the George Majona, the top member. Niri Chadan de Onge, and the Casate, and it Gasola Chap, Mikasa Tanwe Onge, and it Gasola Chadan Lotica de June, and it Kochike Gasola, and that Koyaki Dumen, not so much Shichemudwa. That is a nearly Chadan the Java, Daniel and Nana, Manana Tamito, never chicken, never juice, never short, never target chicken. Did I change over Lamatuba, which jingle up to Kumbasha?
And then, of course, in order to bring all of this about, we need to really deal initially with our biased attitude towards sentient beings, and indeed in biased attitude towards our, our likes and dislikes, that sort of discriminating attitude, and that we need to really develop a sense of equanimity, of an equality and equity. How wonderful! Wonderful of all sentient beings could abide in equanimity, free from attachment and anger, that holds some close and others distant. May this be the case. I will see to it that it is the case. O Guru Deity, please bless me to make this so.
The Gasola Guimbane, Tambudilla, Gun Garbage Pubne. And the Zenanga Gun 또 가시에 채워져 파는 랑다 집어내 랑다 심지 탐제 집어내 쇼라든 토마메반 디고 지다 켜봐도야 세매식에 또 받게 발라 봐도 주 디고 디가 바나니니 바 장시 다바 좀서 성공하셔.
And through our thinking in this way, it then spurs the figure in our merit field, the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha, to emanate the 5 colored nectar lights. And in here, where the white purifying light is predominant, entering in through the crowns of ourselves and all other sentient beings, and purifying us of negativities and obscurations, and particularly those obstacles preventing us from realizing the 4 immeasurable thoughts.
어디래자 되네 양조 공부시 발라 되네 뭐 삼로 양조 당조자 되네지는 덤베굴로 뒤즈는 거 보네 뒤즈 또 세부 수셔가지고 보네 란다란 거 좋습니다 집어네 마슈네 아니 란다란 거 심지 탐제 줄에 아니 가서래다 세매시가 또 박혀봐지 계속 선세서 오다 또 두배 두길로 여번에 시기 또 박혀봐지 뉴디게 바자 켜봐지 샤다 야보 시우 중수 선도 공부자.
And so through reflecting again on our desire to realize the 4 immeasurable thoughts, the 5 nectar lights again ensue from the body of Shakyamuni Buddha, this time with the golden yellow light predominant, and entering into our crown and the crown of all sentient beings, and really bestows on us a special kind of imprint for us to quickly realize the 4 immeasurable thoughts in our minds, in our actions. And we really feel that this is wonderful, that we have been given sort of a special blessing to be able to generate these minds for real in our mind stream quite quickly.
어떻죠? 와다 간제 지금 동해 나와라 다 미셔 받들라 닌제스기와 안다 동해 나와들라 미셔 받들 닌제체 아니 심지어 탐제 대화다 된도기들라 아니 잠바체네 대화대 아니 저 가서도 저기 내가 보기 대화즈 좀 많이 받다 내가 그 대화네 잖아 타도 아니 산제 공부하게 아니 대화 대탐제 아니 된도기 로직 삼로 당고로다 지금 대화 된도 로체니 상와치 어딘데 삼도도 언들 잠바스기로와 와다 된데 된데 삼로 땅에 당문에다네 동해 탐제의 대화 탐제 대마다 바 지가 줘도 아니 다 제마도 받아 세버려 심지어 탐제자 당에 지긴 있어 봐 아니 가서다 가서래 예 지긴 있어 봐 학생 견데 지가 줘도 다 제도요 말이야 제마도 어디 가르쳐서 통계상 개개인의 대화 매번이서 뒤쳐봐라. 다들 제 도근의 수도수는 랑게 되나 세트에 라마투베 뭐 심지도 투게 람라라 응바조바 산지에 til라도 다 뒤고 맞아 맞도나 타면도 뒤고 맞토바 지기 삼사체 와다 공부시는 와다들 심지에스기와 와다 심지에스 와다 뒤좀제 삼로 땅에 뒤쳐도 아니 저거 주마마이 받은 것도 내가 보라다 가버렸대 아니 좀 맞춘 적 봤어요 때문에 와다 저기 좀제 삼로 타는 거다 맞죠 타면도 소 공부하시는 와다 쌤 된대지 아니 게시 메가네다 라모투베 뭐 검정 와다 디체도 다 간제 아니 저기 가서 잔주 쌤 벨랍적이 슌데 다 얘기 해서도 공부하자 어떻게
And so this is through our being able to focus on suffering that we generate compassion. Through our focusing on happiness, we generate the mind of love. And it's really, what we're talking about in the 4 immeasurables, how wonderful it would be if we had happiness and the cause of happiness, if we were free from suffering and the cause of suffering. We're not talking about just temporary, momentary feelings here. We're talking about the fully qualified love, for example, commensurate with the state of enlightenment itself. And so this is what we are really aspiring towards, and that we really need to kind of develop these attitudes so that it's something that we think is truly possible to do. That we have that sense of ambition to free all sentient beings from their suffering and the causes of that suffering, to be able to endow all sentient beings with happiness and the causes of happiness. And that this then is developed into kind of a personal responsibility, which is the exceptional mind state, of really taking on that personal responsibility to really bring this about, and that we really supplicate in order to free ourselves from all inconducive conditions to be able to do this, and to have all conducive conditions to be able to complete it and to bring it off. And so this is the leading to then the reality of our situation, knowing that it's wonderful to have this marvelous exalted motivation and intention, but we are extremely limited in being able to free any sentient being from their suffering and to bestow happiness on any sentient being. But we have the perfect example in the Buddha, who for our sake and the sake of all sentient beings generated that very mind of enlightenment, and then perfected that mind of enlightenment in training, and then manifested full and complete enlightenment purely and for the sake of all sentient beings, for the sake of us and all sentient beings. So therefore, that is what I must aim for. It has to be the case that I must attain the state of enlightenment in order to be of benefit to all sentient beings. And that, of course, is known as the mind of enlightenment. And that even though we, at our beginner stage, will find it difficult to really generate that in any kind of genuine sense, but even though we are doing it artificially, this is something that lays down a very good imprint on our minds. And that, we set this motivation as unartificially as we possibly can, of course, prior to our listening to a teaching from the very text that is telling us how we both generate and then practice this mind of enlightenment.
Chudam tumba madana and the new chick gigitwa. That so the samlo chuda tumba tawaina and sosola dewa chunga ineta, dunga chunga ineta, and neka netan condition by in the netan de and Sanje Komala Lamia to Troya, Janjuga sent the Puta to Troyeke, Tungala Peju Tangu, Yutawach Redwa. The Peju Tan Yutawati was a Peju Tang Mashima Ina, and it was a Tukin Senator to Troya met with it. Then there's a Tendegita, Netan condition, Sambu in it, Yamba in it, Tendeg Netan T. Yumsengatona Samotane, and Janjuga Semkiela, Tungala Peju Tang to it. Tang to Ina. That and then Otango Sanje Kuma to be in second, that cut some 6 of my imbache, Mune Lania Tola Trotting, just had it one.
And so when we talk about, the essence of this mind of enlightenment, of being able to generate that mind of enlightenment, we must contemplate on what are the obstacles to both generating that and living a life according to that motivation. And so here it's a case of really being able to understand what sort of decisions that are made that are in harmony with the cultivation of that mind of enlightenment, and what are decisions that are made that are acting against the essence of the mind of enlightenment. And so here, it's the capacity for us to be able to take on suffering and take on happiness, and for both to be able to bring us closer to the state of enlightenment, to refine our understanding and realization of the mind of enlightenment itself. And that this is, an attitude of mind that is brought about through reasoning, through establishing our decision-making process through reasoning. And so that is very, very important to be able to do that, to move away from just paying lip service to the mind of enlightenment and our integration of that into our lives, and to establish it into a kind of a working a thesis for ourselves, that we are really integrating this aspiration into our daily lives.
안 코에 동엘에 타네 안 타여 마게 심지 탐제가 된주 되게 산제 고마시 두모 주스인데 투모도서 랑게 삼로 디 때네 안 수여도 삼로 디 때네 안 주여도 출론에 체계로 삼로 디 때네 아니 지금 녀몽기 튕겨라 줘서나는 못는 코알네 아니 못는 동에가 동에도 교회 동에 잡아 주제고 동에 못는 녀한테지 야 삼로 당당 디 토네 아니 지가서데 야 지가서데 녀몽 초라 먼저 왔잖아 녀몽 초라 먼저 녀몽 뒤탑당 아니 지금 디 토네다 그 삼로고 토네 경제 시베 토네 녀몽 뒤탈라 치바나 삼로 디 토네 아니 지금 땡기 디지 주베 되게 딱보다 삼로 달라다가 랑 달라 라레 되도 티 출월 세레무당 랑 귀땡 다가 하나도 봐 다들 삼로 당당 초 삼로 상존의 당토가 있나 아니 저기 녀몽 숙청도 충도 저는 다바다 탐지 전백에 고마 토토야 야 뒤에 봐잖아 녀몽을 초라 랑게 삼로 당당 잡조전에 치바 있나네 얘는 모두는 코알네 아니 소소 미드베 동에 건가베 차다 밥대지 용대지 다 삼로 당조 뒤 되는 라레데도 봐 로 삼로 추다 tum바타나 아니 녀몽 숙청도 충도 차네 아니 되지 다 삼로 추다 뭐 tum바탄소나 녀몽데 아니베 가서도 뭐 라다 따네 아니 동에 무트는 용대시 나고 삼로 당다 다가랑 때문에 두면도 출로에 세 가야면도 다 진짜 단위 다게 자야니 단위 다게 고양이 수사 대투대도 자다 고세대
And so the goal is to continuously refine our thinking so that we are in this kind of smooth continuum of really promoting virtue, of completely distancing ourselves from the mental afflictions. And this must be something that is kind of like really our primary goal. That we must do everything we can to stop the influence of afflicted thinking, of mental affliction, and that then we must do everything we can to really establish a continuous and permanent happiness. And this is so important, and to never imagine that this is something that requires external conditions to bring about, that all that we need is within. It's all determinant upon our thinking, and that everything depends on what is going on internally. And so here we have the the continuous reflection on the suffering nature of cyclic existence. For example, how there's the suffering of change, pervasive suffering. And this gives us that kind of clarity of purpose to really want to free all sentient beings from that suffering, because it is so predominant. And so that's something that keeps us reflecting on what is in harmony with that kind of aspiration. What are the actions that should follow that kind of thinking, and how we also look into the status of mental affliction, to what extent is that prevalent or prominent in our lives, and to reflect on how we can subdue mental affliction, how we can avoid mental affliction, how we can distance ourselves from mental affliction. and to kind of really be very definite in our choices, to understand that we have the power to choose what is in harmony with the path to enlightenment and what is not in harmony to that path, and to be able to distinguish the one from the other. So this is very, very important, that when we have we have to take care of our own practice in that way, our own development in that way. As it says, we can be our own enemy, or we can be our own protector.
어디로도 다 간제 셈 뒤마도나 셈 뒤스나 라니랑 고연차기도 셈 마도나 라니랑 자자되도 셈 뒤마도 돈에 샤야래도.
So this speaks to the extent really to which we have subdued our own mind. If we have subdued our own mind, then we are our own protector. If we have not subdued our own mind, then we are our own enemy.
어디 됐을래도 왔다 되게 되는데 다 돈도 다가 이제 지금 가서데 란젠젠다 아니 다도 주바니게 다 디니게 아니 샤완도 소나 아니 뒤남야 아니 다 가바다 탐지 경바다 파샤 아니 내가 그 디게 비다고 전지 매버다 다 타쳐버려도 다 요런가 다 신진진다 아니 다음에 또 베셔람니게 아니 그 내가 그 디기네 저다 산제 고마버게 디기 탐지 아니 가서다 다 간자 지금 가서다 다 레라보토는 용투레치 가서 그 무유게 내주 tum버도 그 레라다 쪽으로 왔다 다 당보된 거인에 좀 마신 벌써 도스 커버였다. 뭐이 때문에 저 신의 뒤 제수 장도 그 레라다 또 이봐도 그 춘이로 와. 어떤데도 다 된데 이봐 인도 되게 된가 좀 어쩌면 돈에 아니 저 라렌 고마도 봐 제리 개지 버도.
And so we have to be able to really make a strong delineation between self-cherishing attitude combined with the grasping at a self-existence as something that is completely contrary, not only to the attainment of liberation and the omniscient state of enlightenment, but also even to temporary happiness. And that here is something that we must recognize very, very clearly. And the opposite, of course, is the mind which is fully immersed in cherishing others, fully immersed in the reality of the emptiness of the true existence of a self, is going to lead to that state of liberation and enlightenment and provide temporary happiness. And also, when we adopt that as our lifestyle, as the very essence of our life, with practice, it becomes easier and easier and easier. This is the case when we see that reality more and more clearly. It becomes easier for us to be able to adopt it in every situation. That is simply the nature of familiarity.
Okay, that in the image ranjenzinge ane dungen sogu yobata ana dadu jobeke ane dungen da sogu yobate dungen sogu yobate sanje ge soba keja mare kunjo ge soba ke ma ti ko di kasade di koso ngoyu ge nesula ane di shawang de chimba yina ane dungen yongu yobache ane shen jenzen da ane dame dobe sherage ane yende de tone di komne chimba yina ane 지금 그래서 내가 그 디기네 제 다도 산제가 디기 건가 아니베 용대에 산제가 세워 말이고 가서도 다 지게 가서는 가서 내줘 로차대로 뭐여기 내줘 대차대로 다 뭐여기 내줘 되는데 이번에 가라도 또 두고 매봐 인자 아니 산제기 다 간자 깨바네 깨봐도 제바제인데 어다 디기 교인 받아 세원도 세바데 딱 가라도 제가 거는 또 많이 받아 So
and so it is the case that this self-cherishing attitude is something that creates a suffering, that our adherence to the true existence of a self is that which creates suffering. And that here, we also are fully aware of the suffering related to being under the influence of mental affliction continuously. You know, it's something that we need to make very obvious for ourselves. And that the opposite of that, the mind which cherishes other, is that which leads to happiness, a happiness, and the mind which cherishes others, combined with the attitude realizing the emptiness of the true existence of self, is that which leads to a happiness that is ultimate and happiness that is temporary. And that here, you know, this is described as just a natural law. This is the way things are. And that we may not realize this, but the Buddhas of the three times and the great masters, eon after eon, have pointed out that such and such is the cause of happiness, such and such is the cause of suffering, and they have made that a truth from their own experience. And so we should see that as that which is true.
我的他们的这个三节个所小把这我当那工作个所小把的那干嘛的？他说我有个那最第一摆上，我说第一的我有个那最他妈的那第一用起了吧？东岸的我有个那最干用把第一，那就指望的那东岸没得是都用得起了吧？那到这个所以呢东岸用的我的那干嘛的？这个所以呢第一用的我的那个嘛的，可是第一可能用一个，我有个那最准备个呢。 규칙을 아니 뒤쪽서나 그 규디 창소나 아니 디기디 용디기래 아니 그 뭐여기 내 쪽에 아니 동해게 그 규라테네 용거 여바 인상 디야 뭐여기 내 쪽에 동해 규가인 바 디겐 가리 바 초한테 아니 소소 동해 되고면에 동해 용거를 그래서 그 가리 바는 뭐여기 내 쪽 투바데 수강을 매고 소투고 말와 수강을 교와 따두고 말와 어떤데
And so this reality of you know, suffering causes leading to undesirable suffering, of happiness causes leading to desirable happiness, is not something that has somehow been created or invented by the Buddha, by anybody else. It is just a natural way of things. This is the way it is, that if we find suffering inconvenient or undesirable, then we can understand what the causes of such suffering is, and the conditions as well that lead to the ripening of such suffering, and do something about it at that level. This is the natural way of things. If we want happiness, we find that something desirable for us, then we can isolate the causes of that happiness and establish the conditions around that in order to establish happiness.
근데 인반사 남배 쇼네 최제 시간대 근데 저 고거에서는 뭐 이거 내저 tumbe 다 최제에서 디기 두고였어 여러 봐. 다 디기 두고였어도 아니 가서나 뭐 이거 내저 하고 봤잖아. 아니 디다 tumbe 돈에 아니 디기 줍다치에. 동안 되고 매서 동안 미도에 동안데 뭐 이거 내저 동안 그래서 연구도 디셰바체. 디셰바 돈에 동안데 아니 주방답지에지. 저래서 최제스기로 와.
And so in the Buddhist texts, it goes on about engaging in Dharma practice, And so what does that mean? It means that we are establishing happiness. We are looking to establish happiness for ourselves. And that it's saying that there is the actuality of our situation has to be understood in order to bring this about. That we are, when we are saying that we are engaging in Dharma practice for happiness, what we are doing is saying, therefore, we must act in harmony with that aspiration. Therefore, one isolates the causes of happiness and one seeks to establish them to guarantee that happiness. One also understands the nature of cyclic existence and the suffering inherent in that, and that we therefore, in order to establish happiness, we must avoid suffering, and therefore one isolates the causes of suffering and abandons them in order to prevent suffering arises. So it is an attitude which comes from an understanding based on reality.
근데 이면서 산제게 산제랑가 로마솔라 결혼다가 캐남게 세제다에 세제다 레바타라 나이가 wada leba dalanga ga langwachi kuchiri mis wa soye dero gelonda keba soge nyege shebaresne ani kelenchigo mares ser nyogenge ana ser takji kandes shebalne jen tendes takji jene ani nyeba nyige dona ngoyu nesu tumba duna ani kyanso lale ka sungu duwa kaso ko ngoyu nesu tumba sungin de suyimi jumse mare ngoyu nesu tumba duna takugu duwa.
So that, brings us to the famous statement by the Buddha himself. He said, "O monks and scholars, do not accept what I say just because I say it. You must treat what I say like they do in the market when people buy gold. They check it through burning, through cutting, through rubbing, to ensure that what they're spending their money on is the genuine article. And so from your point of view, you must analyze what has been said in order to see that it accords with reality. If it does, then you put it into practice. But you must, first of all, for your own sake, establish that it accords with reality."
Dene yima yinza kurwa sungen de surja gechmo mare sungye donda de karisha gechmo re donda le tangdön de nyedön yongu yore tangdön gechmo mare nyedön gechmo re nyedön ya namchele toba da yishele toba ni yongu re kurwa namchele toba de gechmo re yishele toba de gechmo re dene yimza ko ngoyu ge nesu mune da tachma de kaballegido 어디다 쏜 것도
남셰탕
남셰라 땜바다 이셰라 땜바 쓰다 다도 냠샤 이시게 니바드 쓰고 봐 냠샤 이시게 니바다 유된 좀 뒤삼에 봐 이거도 와 어다든 거 여기 내수 뒤에 쓴 거로 봐 다 장된다 얘도 니게 나네 뭐 강사다 최니 강사의 송예 니게 나네 송예디 Jumsen Dumodo Tower, Kansa Jumse Taju Maris, Kansa de Kedachimore Mare Taju Maris, Kansa de Shed Garisha Towers, Shell Tangdun and Yeduni Yongores, Tangdun and Yeduni on to Tangdun the Getchmo Maris, Yedun the Getchmores. Yedule Namchela Teva the Yishila Teva Nigores, Namchela Teva the Getchmo Mars, Yishila Teva, Yishisanata, Yamsha Yishila Tentebach, Yamsha Yishi Garinibat. Yishila Teva.
And so it said that when listening to anybody speak, one should not consider the one should not consider the speaker, but rather what they say. And when one is listening to what they say, one must consider the meaning that is being proffered. And when one is considering the meaning, one actually considers the definitive meaning over the interpretative meaning. And when one considers the definitive meaning, one must consider the meaning of the mental wisdom within that meaning over the namshe, the
남셰서 다 간자 말로도 가서다 인지견은 센서리 레바스로
yes, over the sensory, over kind of the meaning coming from one's mental kind of consciousness over one's sense consciousnesses.
Yeah, 다 멘tal 나로래 거의 스타블 방법이야. 막 제바 다 냠샤 이시소라. 냠샤 이시데다 And
so when we're talking about mental consciousness, there are many different levels of mental consciousness, but here what is being referred to is that which is contemplating ultimate reality, to see that there's a lack of true existence, that it is merely imputed by thought, etc.
我对什么？我点把我那银把的对，但让这个就把对上买把银把银上，我觉得就当的店的就把门都买对，哦呢，对了店的，安呢，叫我去take个多，连着 take个多，安呢，靠呢，他来用不多，安他把他们这钱把送来的用不多，但让我呢就买把银对，我这个刚刚的呢，他或者我有个那最的，突破周边钱嘛，这个我推小了吧。
And so when we contemplate this level of truth, at this level, we are able to verify from the ultimate truth of the situation, how past and future lives are verified, how the law of cause and effect is verified, how the paths to liberation and the omniscient state of enlightenment are justified. Indeed, it is that kind of level of truth that we should always kind of aim for. And this is the kind of ultimate reality operating from that level.
我得了，但是我有个那最给俺接触长了，这个等我你多个多，这个的你为了点呢，俺他多个这个做多个多，他多个东岸就晒多个多。我得了，我得了。
So operating at that level of actuality, the ultimate nature of reality, that we can establish that suffering can be brought to an end, its complete eradication, and so on.
我光打当个对吧？这里钱胸处不大。
So I've gone off on a bit of a tangent. I haven't approached the text yet.
cavalli stanno ni cavalli.
Shokran gyatang dunju dok som. Wogi tikti niba dugnil chungu tang tanguleng ne. Yalwa dugnil gigyu.
Hola, 다 간제저 나라도 미유디 가서나 심제 탐제가 돈도 아니 산제 공부 라는 돈을 세트 라마 투배용 공부도 디토발라 아니 잠니 잔주가 셈다 돈이도 배 셔라니 냠서 말랑 탐면도 다데면서 디데베 숑 다디니가 요 삼사전 라마 투배용 검시방안에 다 니바 동아 어서 충우 당도 랑네 냐외 동에 주 똑바자와라 니체 배다데 sen beta tuas ni che be kon le xie da ni dun da du mo zhe jie ni che da dang bo ni ka sa de da be de la za wa le sui jie mi xi la jie de ge de ta na ji ma le ge de mi dong ge nya wa de na ji ma le.
And so the main objective, of course, is the objective of our attaining the state of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And knowing that to be able to generate that, we need to generate the kind of love and the compassion, the mind of enlightenment, the emptiness realizing, the view of realizing emptiness. All of these contribute to that attainment of enlightenment. So we set our motivation in that way again, and in the presence of the Guru Manindra and the merit field, we approach this next few verses of the text. So we're at a second outline, which says that we need to really accept small sufferings willingly in order to put a stop to causes that might otherwise lead to hell suffering for ourselves. And this is dealt with in terms of an example, and then the meaning of that example. And so we're looking at verse number 72, which reads, "Why is a man condemned to death not fortunate if he is released after having his hand cut off? Why am I, who am experiencing human misery, not fortunate if by that I am spared from the agonies of hell?"
다 간제 저 개체종 대전 수고요. 다 개체종 대전. 개체 대도서 저러 가서도 지금 서버 외배 미시 다 간제 저 개가 그 팀라 소바던데 아니 나니 포전 다 팀도는 그 세에 다 제상이 미치로 다 jet sentence sigdo ta de se ta je mi je mi shi ane dibala ji ka so le ta dibala ya tabshi shamba ji jone ta tabshi shamba jone ane ko se mo go ba chen ba ta je sa gen de ta se mo go chen ko ji la ba so lo je chen la ba ji je chen ba ta de so jo ba ina ane ga la ba je de ge de 서버에 타와 있나 지말이 됐다. 간제 지금 미 류덴의 르난톤되게 아니 미 류덴의 로아다 가저 저 라바 메바 있는 미젠 대와 있나다 겨우 상보로 와. 아니 된다 망보지 줍두고 와. 간제 내주 망보지 동투 그래 제도 그래 로아든 아니 지금 낭미주의네 딱 소소 미 또배나 지금 바바이나 아마이나 이나 수저 부구이나 지금 배세 땡캬사죠 지금 안데 세모가 저 라바체나 타와인데 가서 연구로 와. 가서 연구로 왔다. 남미서 앞에 가보 연구로 왔다. 삼로 당신의 집이나 가서 연구로 왔다. 근데 이제 서바유에 미실 라제데 게데 서바델 타와이나 지말레데 빼면서 야보 연구로 왔어. 내가 대난 현재는 게데 미 동행에 딱 가서 미에다라 배서 소소저 고나와라 소와 야나 미게 통중 제발라 소와 된데게 동해 된데 책에 안에 동해대 안에 당도 내네 동해대 당도 내네 안 동해 들을 때는 야 진야와라 게 주마주 받잖아 야 정말 받는데 봐 맞게 받잖아 서바 검토바 이마이나 냐와 게 동해대 제와나 근데 약보르지 지말래 때 신도 렉소 셔봐서 어떻죠
So this verse is dealing with really a sense of kind of what is the priority, what is most important. And the example is of a person who is condemned to death, you know, probably in the past through royal decree, and they are definitely slated for execution. And for some reason that somebody perhaps advocates on their behalf, that sentence is not followed through, and instead of their losing their lives, they lose a hand that is cut off. Now, that has to be a good result for somebody who most definitely would have lost their lives, and we must think also of their family. They must be mightily relieved and so on. They can still do so much even though they are missing a hand. And so in that particular, the example shows that you know, there is kind of like something better. That is, there's the difference between worse and better. And in the way that's related to our practice is that if we're able to accept small sufferings like headache or something like of that kind, and as a result of that are able therefore to avoid creating the causes for much greater suffering in the hell realms later on, that must be a good thing. I mean, that must definitely be an excellent thing.
Bena sugar nazala so nazaga tuge and nachene yana naza shambate de nachene gangba da laba che go de yungu do ti ma na subu chadala naza de chapto go yobache ta de ani jenga sa ne ha go chen oda ji yana laba yana gangba do che ba yina ene sa de chapma do ba chaye che de yungu do inji mi je tim de ge wa de yungu go mar ba ta yine da de amji ke ba do ta che chen oda kirande 다 탑시 약속의 디레샤 팀에는 그런 소리 내가 두살에 팀에는 되는 임바자 그런 게 강바 예지 달려 당고 살았으나 왔다 소소 소조 먹어다 디데 인데 몇 삼사 정도로 왔다 은 가병 안에 교보 마제답 지기로 왔다 제답 지기로 가서 미 류된 데는 약으로 와 소소 남미술의 약으로 소소의 약으로 다 가제 어딘데 제 제바 있는 그 지금 담가 뭐노 와 제바로 와 담가 노르요 말다고 디 담가 노르소나 코 시도고 요와 다 시모고 저는 코 딜레 제도고도 왔다 어딜레 다가 내신 거 지고 왔다 돈다들 가서나 아니 라다 지발에 나라도 미기 소 내밖에 ਪਹਿ라 소소 ਪਹਿ나 삼사 소소 내가 쇼토에 잡았네 로다 가지고 고 나와서 지그래다 내가 쇼토에 잡았는데 다 근데 괜찮은 저 아니 소소 미기 소소를 내가 너밖에 강에 쳐야 되는 용도도 와 직두자 라베다 가는데 강에 쳐다 다 된데 강에 쳐봐 들라 때네 소소 야 콘드 상황도 존에 안 들라 내가 파숙 쳐서 깨봐 이나 다 소소 녀석 거 동에 주주고도 들라디 갑도 강에 때 소소 서바 검사이나 서바 검사나 녀석 강에 주도 좀 먹어 차기도 다 렌데 그 남자 신경 집어이나 어디 삼로 당사시도 와 삼로 당나 소소 캐드 렌신거도 와 어디 숨고였다
And so, you know, this situation can play out also, say, if we have a headache or somebody looks down on us, some smaller problems, be able to accept without getting upset or disturbed in these situations, of course. Of course, the situation might be like, too, that, you know, people who suffer from diabetes and have severe cases of diabetes may have to have a limb removed in order to save their lives, in order to prevent the whole body being pervaded, and so on. And this can come from, of course, not the law, but a doctor can advise in situations that the whole life is in danger here. You may save your life by having a leg or a hand removed. And so in that particular situation, the person would see what is the better choice there and to be able to make a non-mistaken choice in that regard. And so from our point of view, this relates to our capacity to make unmistaken choices when we are faced with, say, something like, you know, the kind of minor ailments that have been mentioned, or if we lose a job, or if we're harmed by another person such that it causes us great problems, or that you know, we can choose anger in that sense to kind of react to those situations and thereby inflame the situation at hand, as well as create the causes for the very health sufferings that we want to avoid. Or we can choose patience in those situations, and that we can maintain our peace of mind, as well as completely avoid any causes that might lead to health suffering in the future. And so it's incumbent upon us to make the unmistaken choice in with regard to any of these situations that might arise.
소소게 저기 동네 당도 레벨 소바스가 동네 당도 레벨 소바스가 됐다 가서 다 제도가 지구를 숨고 여러 제도가 지구를 동네 당도 레벨 소바스도 동네 캐 아니 가야 맞아 되나 말이야 동네 들라 때네 너무 많게 받지들 이내 동네디 저거 마음발라 모여야다 아니 단다대 숙충도 줘야라 그 답시 가리네 지구로 와 지적으로면 다디 맞아와서 소바 공부여서는 동에 강가 캔데 계자 말와 다 동에디 가서 동에디 가서 차 인지께는 저는 미닝풀 소고다 동에 중앙디 마음발라 동에 마용하게 동에 때도 뭐야 중나 타이바 마게 심제 탐제를 동에 되는지 마용하게 다 유튜브 같이지 유튜브 같이지 오다가 이제 동에 중앙대 동에대 전다 때 마용 같이 근데 동해 당도래서도 동해 캐네 대대스요 말와 동해디 셋업체 동해 딜라테는 라는 너무 많이 받치고 그랬어.
And so this verse relates to that one of the categories of patience in the classical teaching on patience, that patience of accepting, willingly accepting suffering. And so here it's not a mere case of just bearing the suffering. Here that the emphasis is on of dealing with suffering, so that first and foremost we avoid mental affliction arising. That this is the first priority, and then we actually, it's again not just leaving it at you know, remaining static and accepting the suffering, but then we actually start to say we're going to make this suffering meaningful. And so here, you know, we can do something about it to relieve the suffering for ourselves in the short term, and then also to make it more meaningful in the future, to kind of avoid the same sort of suffering in the future. Of course, you make practical steps like that. But even more meaningful is to say that may I dedicate whatever I'm suffering now so that all sentient beings, all kind mother sentient beings, may not have to experience any of this suffering again in the future. And so there's a great deal to this category of patience, the patience of willingly accepting suffering.
그렇지. 당연히 배나 소소라 지기 생은 내게와다 지기 제와이나 소바 검니 아니 소바 공발 들라 때네 아니 된데게 내가 계게 미디 내 마음발 나 산제 고마 토바이나 얘게 추게 집바 당보디 강사들 진토바 쇼스.
And that, you know, you may have a particular incident or a series of incidents with a particular individual who is engaging in harm towards you. And that here your practice of patience can include the aspiration that, you know, not only do I not get upset or disturbed in this particular instance, but also I'm focusing on the one who is harming me now. And when I attain the state of enlightenment, may they be amongst the very first that I am able to give teaching to when I am enlightened.
저기 뒤에 당부대 아니 강사들 진투바 쇼스 강사들 진투바 쇼스 어디게 편바다야 가서 나랑 속에 가서도 미지 초에데 나 대바 첨배 최냠내 지금 저 미지 초에데 산제 고마드에 유튜브에서 초되게 저 소투바 걸어보다 이 소투바 이나다 우당와 이만나 칼라사와 이나다 생거소 내게와 이나다 생거소 편도와 이나다 다 가르쳐봤네 아니 타바다 탐제 계획 유튜브에 가서도 다가자저 통계를 배주 당도 같이.
And so, you know, from our point of view, you know, that in leading the lives that we lead, that from the Mahayana point of view, it requires us to use every possible moment to create the causes for that state of enlightenment. And that means every breath we take, every incident that we encounter, when we're eating and drinking, whatever we are doing, the person who is harming us, the person who is helping us, everything is in the mix. And that here we adopt and bring to it this kind of thinking where we make the moment as meaningful as possible.
다 드레스 제와 이네 아니 소소게 미지코라 다 최다 템베게 다 리주트 차버와 로가 도고 말에 다가랑 리주트 차버래.
And so in that particular case, if we're able to do that, then in the life that we are leading right now, whatever we are doing, we do not need to go into a separate retreat situation, but in fact, with this kind of thinking and this kind of dedication, our whole life becomes a Dharma retreat.
뉴욕 시티를 대바네 경가요 말이야. 근데 제토가 있나?
And so
뉴욕 시티를 대바네 경가요 말이야.
if you're even if you're in the middle of New York, you will have no problem.
다 삼루데 땅 마셔나 사자 쿠조저 리조트 스토어 직접 아니 거기 있는 요모라 구급대는 샤와이나 다 카페가 말이야.
And conversely, if you're in an isolated place in so-called retreat, but you're kind of playing host to the mental afflictions, then there's no benefit to that whatsoever.
요 말이야. 다 가잖아 소속에 가서도 구급 남일라 다 간제 저 페바땅 삼로땅 구급 남일라 어디에 전에 침바이나 다 아니 갈리 남시나 아니 저거 당보다 내라고 연구 말때 남시나 아고 공배 제수타에 아니 달라딜라 아니 잡된 참아요래 고바 탐에도 배요래 남시나 고 뭐에 내주 틈바 저거 요도 강에 매딩이지.
And so it's really a matter of our being awake to and willing to accept the opportunities that arise for us, and so to make everything into something which is beneficial. Of course, in the beginning, it is not easy to do that, but slowly, we become more proficient, and it becomes more spontaneous for us. Why? Because this whole attitude is backed up by valid reasoning. And it is in the very nature of valid reasoning that it can be developed in an exponential way. And so ultimately, you will find a person who is harming you. You can only perceive them in a beneficial frame of mind, who is seeing them as actually bringing you great benefit. And slowly, yeah, you get to that point.
Then is a social pen toward the new Gavanica, social pen toward the new guessing, social Samotana related one.
Then we see clearly that whether it's the person benefiting you or the person harming you, it just depends on our thoughts, our perception of that. And so the second part of that outline was the explaining the meaning of that previous example. And this is verse number 73, which begins, "If I am unable to endure even the mere suffering of the present, then why do I not restrain myself from being angry, which will be the source of hellish misery?"
I just want to young and some tango to young and Tanda so lula and the jig Sama Suwatabo, Yana, Shengi Junju Chewatabo, Rota Yana, Jig Shengi Jig Seti, Digila, Soso Deva Yuvetilla, Nekava, Chujun Masune, Magane Tegiola, Tunga, Desala, Target, Soso Sobacom Tugumudua, Soba Menuna. That Dilatena, that condition on the town, Dile, that jig Sapchawa, and in Yasongo Tunga. 다가는 냐와다 다 냐와라 지금 사장의 동에 나서고 녀야 동에 저에게 아니 주 컨트롤 뭐데 제바이나 컨트롤 아니 소소 까마도 이나 다 되게 쪽으로 와 되는데 컨트롤 찌다 도고 미체대 냐바도 도고 저거 다 단다 동에 된대지를 쓰고 문도나 내가 그 동에 세디 답이나 룰라 참아수바이나 야나 지금 어저 지가서도 칼라로 쓰 되게 도스 바와 이나다 야나 미지가 소 견주 제네 제가 야고 민도서라 근데 걔라 닝제고 민도 걔라 수고 야고 모델 나오는 것도 거기 이렇게 컨트롤 사 되기도 와 왔다 된대 잡에 쓰고 민도나 다 소소게 딜레되는 컨트롤 사와 이나 다 소소가리 왜 개와 정도도 객사 정도도 다가는 생게 지금 다대 녀몬 딜레되는 아니 봐줘도 내 개가 삼로 켜고도 무겁 중난 내 개와 이나 아니 년송의 동에 주주고도 와 아니 년송의 동에 그때 다 쇠사를 다 쇠사 말에는 안디 juk 아니 컨트롤 가르쳐 랑귀요 컨트롤 가르쳐 싸고요 쓰고 여러 봐 안디 더 거기로 왔어 세문제 동에 되고 문도는 동에 주 더 거로 와 동에 주 마도 와지 아니 동에 되고 문도서 컨트롤 사대 와 있나 다른 거 가서 다 가서래 남주 여와다 캐바그 조다지 레몬도 와 캐바그 조다이나 동에 되고 문도 동에 주 가래 째저 까고로 와 동에 주도 아니 동에 되고 문도서 나타 가서 개개 마신 게 따지래도 와.
So this deals with looking at, say, if one is kind of feels the suffering of a thorn in the foot or in some other part of the body, and that here, if we're unable to put up with and to accept such suffering, and then, you know, why isn't it that we don't do anything about anger, which can create the cause for the suffering of hell? And so it's something there, you say, you know, the priority is that you must put a stop to that kind of anger, of that kind of reaction, if you want to really put a stop to the suffering of hell. And so here it's a case of our being able to deal with the temporary sufferings, whereby they could be some kind of frustration over kind of a physical pain like that, kind of a thorn or a headache, or something to do with getting the right food, or being criticized in some way, or people engaging in kind of a body shaming or stuff like that. And that if we get angry at those situations, then we have generated the mental affliction, which is guaranteeing us to create the causes to be reborn in hell in the future. And here we must kind of we think, in a situation like that, it's almost like your anger tells you, you must oppose this kind of harm. You must do something about it through being angry. It's like, the anger has seen its opportunity and therefore starts to, describe this narrative of reaction. But in fact, it is anger itself that must be opposed, that to really avoid creating such causes. That, it's kind of again, it goes back to that valid reasoning whereby you say to yourself, I don't want suffering. So if you don't want suffering, then I must isolate what the causes of suffering are. And lo and behold, anger is one of these causes of suffering. And so therefore, I must oppose anger if I am to oppose suffering, if I'm to stop creating the causes of suffering.
소소게 지금 노조 가야 제마와 이내야 아니 소소 소양전에다 미기 다 가져제 배주 당사 차네 강에 휴체되기도 강에 휴체되기도 다 된데 강에 체디 아니 유지 두배 인자디 용되게 열봐 된데 강에 체디 주메기메 말이다 랑게 유지 싸네 아니 딜레테네 제부 단다들 둔둘에 깨고예 아니 둔둘에 깨네 아니 되네게 랑게 다 지게 가서도 랑게 루드 랑라 마와 전에 아니 지가서다 지금 미 초에 돈달라 아니 강에 먹고 채되기도 다디 건가 지다 미게 눈주다 레데 얘네야 둔두 코난 게 안 된데지 용에게 레정원도 살이 용되기도 살이 용되기도 하다 어디 용되기도 하다 단데서 그 주사데 아니 데부데 맞춰가지는 용되기도 용되기도 하다 간제 어딘데 다 된데 인바 인상 지금 알아도 단다 지금 가서도 단대기 동에 지금 마수바 디 세금도나 아니 디 동에게 주 아니 마주바 제디 개쳐버려도 와 마주바자 다 동에 주데 마부자다 콘로다 된데 꾸네라는 용도도 와 용되기도 와다 진짜 단대 동에 디 세금도나 아니 녀송도 동에도 모두 쇠토야 거라요 말와 녀송도 동에 소토에 매바 이나 대와 애니 녀송은 동에 요 콘로 가르치는 사기 요새 달 데려도 왔다 내당 데려도 와 진짜 왔다 데려되는 콘로스도 가고도 가고도 와
And so, of course, this brings us to really highlight the presentation of cause and effect. Say, if you look at the animal world, how they are, especially domesticated animals or domestic animals, farm animals, and so on, so much used and abused by human beings in so many different ways. But we mustn't forget that they have created, the animals themselves have created the cause for this to occur. They have been created a cause to be born as an animal in those situations and to put themselves exactly in those situations. And of course, it doesn't in any way excuse the mistake that the human beings are making in their abuse, in abusing these animals and so on. But it also shows the kind of uncompromising relationship between cause and effect. And so here is the situation as well, that, for when we are suffering and we find that unbearable, and so much so that we have to, generate anger as a mistaken means of overcoming that suffering, then we are acting ignorantly as to the law of cause and effect. We know at some level that we are creating the causes to have a much worse rebirth in the lower realms in the future. And so it's kind of saying, if you don't want such a rebirth, don't create such a cause, And in summary, this verse is really saying, the lower realms, if you don't want rebirth in the lower realms, then why are you getting angry?
나민게 되고 대 간달라 가달 잡아 규대 녀와 규대 단델라 소베고 대부 영다 먼저 먹고 쉬우 정도도 아니 뒤에서 거 규칙 싸발할 때는 딜할 때는 아니 가서 무튼에 아니 된데가 야 동네가 그 주의 아니 천견을 줘대지 먹고 쉬우 정도도 아다 네가 같이 영대가 되게 랜데가 조당데 약부지 심바이나 오 다데다 촌들에서 말에 삼사지 용하지 다 레와 여러봐
And so really this thing that, that we really need to accept the temporary sufferings, and that when we look into the law of cause and effect itself, such as the ripening result or the kind of the experience related to the cause, the experience related to the result that's arising in harmony with the action that we've done, the experience that we're going through, and the environmental effects and so on. That when we have a clear and kind of very detailed understanding of the whole presentation of the law of cause and effect, that should really start to inform our ability to make wise decisions in the face of these temporary sufferings.
어디를 오도 다가제 대주가 람림다 파자제네 람림다 파자 람리가 렌데가 남샤다 도 파자네 아니 내가 그저 람림나를 파주투버체네 제게 좀 이봐 어디를 쳐
And so this the graduated path teachings, and particularly subject matter on the law of cause and effect, are something that are very, very important in this regard.
그거들 그 제보직 녀네 아니 매가 차도야 그러면도 제보직 대야 규는 것이 배는 양송을 견나배 저 개바만 본 연구에 되나 아니 이제 미류된 타바이네야 그래서 제바 규된다 영화 규된다 대조가야 무튼이야 동의 유튜브에 정도가 유튜브에 되게 정도가 단단 알아줘에 저 컨트롤 사초죠 저 롱랑 조조 영화도 갈 수는 되고 제바 규된다 영화 규된 대조가 지금 열어봐. 뭐도 또 신규 열대 신의 팽금도 와. 남자 제시 스마도 와 저는 눈치 저거도 와.
And so that here, when you see the most extensive presentation of the law of cause and effect, it details issues like, how long, for example, one must abide in the lower realms if one is reborn there, and how, once you've created a cause, it doesn't disappear of its own accord. It will ripen at some stage. Also, that even if born as a human being, we have that fortunate ripening result, but we may still be bedeviled by the karma that is kind of related to the habit that we have, the habitual nature of the cause that we've created. The experiential aspect of the cause that we've created, so that, for example, you have people who are extremely irritable and easy for anger to arise all the time, and that even though they have an understanding of the negativity of anger, they're still beset by such a strong habitual attachment to reacting in that way because of the habitual nature of the karmic imprints.
다가는 이제 문에 전화 내주 건가라 상부이네 년바이네 최주에게 통계 유여다 딜라 렌토고도 센시티브들 렌토고도 네거티브들 센시티브들 남자 렌토고도 그 공배한 거로 와 문제나 미 소소로 팬토와이네 뇌게바 니가라 아니 개와 두베게 튕게 요래 튕게 요르데 어디 튕게데 딕바사이에 튕게데 렌토고도 뭐다 개와 두베 튕게데 백하고 그래도 와 그래서 개와 두베게 센시티브를 두고 본도 와 딕바사이에 센시티브 랑장래 두고 데 건배 온 거로 와.
So then there's the issue of, like, you know, when we are living any kind of a life, you have positive situations arise, you have negative situations arise, but we seem to be so sensitive to the negative situations arise, so that they are kind of able to press our buttons much more easily. Then we engage in negativity on the back of that. Whereas we are not so sensitive to the positive situations that arise for us, that we don't kind of are inspired, we're not so easily inspired to engage in benefit on the back of those positive situations that arise for us. And you know, the conditions are always there for both, yet we seem to have this predilection towards negativity, and to kind of like follow on that kind of path of negativity when those conditions arise, whereby the positive conditions we sometimes kind of go through, we don't see them, we don't react to them as readily.
어디 세도 다 네가 간 거저 어떤 레샤 삼로마다 자 어삼 오호 다들 공배 온 거래샤 그 남리다 저도 삼로다 녀몽 생에데 아니 저기 소소 팬도와 있네 야 들려들은 녀몽 걔네 마기버 소도도 아니 다 내게봐 있는데 뒤장네 거 차주고도 와 남잘래도 이네 내게의 팬도가 니가라 아니 야 지가 소데 닝제게다 잠바게다 렌데를 녀바니에다 된데게 내수에 요르데 이네 디 렌투고문도 다 딜레 마토에 가서는 깨왕마만 딜 공바면도 삼사지 녀몽 졸라 센시티브 렌투 공배 온 거를 샤선다 다들 촌을 이거 뭐도 다들 삼로단다데 교화치 마다오나 아니 기바지 뒤남에 영상 말이었으나 아니 녀바니 거지 용고도 와 그러나 기부 담바다 계속 다니 전부라 강에 가서 전에 강에들 남도 캐두고도 와 나라도 남도 캐두고면도 와 녀몽게 아니 캐두고도 와 때 가르쳐서 공배 온 거 차대도 와 공부도 빼내가 쳐버려도 와
And so that yes, and in the Lam Rama talks about the kind of prevalence of mental affliction in that way, how we're so habituated towards the afflicted way of thinking and of seeing the hints for negativity that just seem to take over, and our mind kind of travels in that direction. It's very hard to get off that train, as it were, and that you know, that we fail to understand that the opportunity for benefit is equally there. You know, it's all sublimated in our minds, but it's there, that the chance for increasing our love and our compassion and so on is there, but we don't take that opportunity. And it's all down to what we are habituated to. And so that's something that we need to really think about. We say, I've got to break this cycle, to cut this habit. And so to change my way of thinking, and that, you know, to gain a real sense of conviction that this is both the way, this is why my thinking is the way it is, and the conviction as to how, yes, I can definitely change it. I can definitely bring some sense of transformation. Because when we look at the great examples of the great beings from the past, and the Bodhisattvas, the Buddhas, and so on, that when a situation arises, they immediately, automatically take the beneficial way to respond to it, regardless of what that situation is. It arises naturally. Why? Because they have become utterly habituated to doing that. And so that's the kind of way of thinking, and the actions that arise from that way of thinking that we need to adopt.
penetration, penetration, Kamurin Bochel Sida. Jana Manu Shungi, and about Tigazigi, Tajikaso, Kunju, Tanda, Chetigo Yore, and also Lumba Nema to a child. In a Jango Gobala, Tanda here, and a Janachi on the Pemba to Vieta, Tambula Semja Yonzola, I don't know, Chijanami Manda to the Pemba to Vieta, Compachabo Shujumudua. Tilatene, Chicken Magawache, Magibache, and it's a condo Sata, Yumudua. Casapa. Kibu Tamba singing data, Chicken Caso de Casoleta. Because when you get to Kingo, you was a way you get to the top, Pepper to have sanction the carrying by the top, Mano land to Yorba. And didn't anybody land to go.
A really good example of this is, of course, the whole life of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, who has been the subject of not only the Chinese invading and destroying much of his homeland, but also their continuous and completely irrational criticism of His Holiness. And yet you will never hear a wrong word said by His Holiness with regard to the Chinese government, or indeed the Chinese people. And indeed, he is completely dedicated 100% to being able to bring benefit to the Chinese people, just like any other beings that exist. And so here, there's no dislike, there's no anger, because His Holiness is operating at the level of actuality that allows him to be able to unmistakably take the essence of every situation. And this is what we can aim for, is a wonderful example that we can emulate.
And it's not the social because of the social development, the young in by development, the control massa watching, and the church to be 20 years, Pejutang to watch it, that gets
And so that's from our point of view, to take that example, to do the best we can, to make a connection with what is best in us as well. And that, you know, whether it's somebody, you know, acting according to our desires or completely thwarting our desires, that we completely avoid anger. It's never a choice to make, but to see in what way we can bring a benefit to that situation. Doing chimbo to be Kachela Kawer, Kawa Ripala Nicha, Kajala Kawa Ripala Nicha, Nga Luchism, Chusujan, Randunda, Shendu, Kaya Matube, Gubatan. Tade Kaja Sobachana, Toa Tataga Don to Bala, Kawa Ripa watch. The next main outline is dealing with how correct it is to embrace difficulty and austerity for the sake of establishing something extremely important. And this has two subheadings, saying that, you know, previously, you know, we should have regret for our previously squandering so much of our lives and bodies that we have received without ever achieving anything, even in terms of our own purpose, let alone the purpose of others. And secondly, and now to kind of really cultivate a patience for austerity and difficulty, because in this way, we can establish the meaning, kind of what is meaningful for all the sentient beings.
Chingar because Lu condition that Lu betam me was lang your what I'll do Lu tam me was lang your Lu dan because the lava there and choose jata Nimbushi Galen to your Maranga Dole, Nimbulan to Marcella Pepper to Nimbush Galen to Matara Kaya Matuba there and the Shembeton what are the because what are the North Shas and water bachena till a Cuba answer till a Cuba Jebus till a Zawale to Veton to Segla so Nyala. Nyawa Tongcha Nyongjuja, Daji Rangi Dundane, Shengi Machi, source.
And so, and he is talking about these lives that we've had, you know, basically countless lifetimes without ever being able to take the essence of those lives, because we haven't established anything in terms of our own welfare or the welfare of others up to this point. Verse number 74 says, "For the sake of satisfying my desires, I have suffered numerous burnings in hell. But by these actions, I fulfill the purpose of neither myself nor others."
어때? 다 되네서 다 지금 말아서 세 토마메 반에 깨월레는 레바 인상 다 깨월레는 레가 다게 아니 더버트베도 다 란진제 군들라네 아니 소소가 때 팽게도 삼사잖아. 다 란진제게 상황도 치 몸바 마리베 디기잖아. 뭐 이거 니스 마치 마치 된데 온게 나를 가서 되바 돈주베 돈도 다 소소 되베 돈도 소소 팽게도 삼사자 나라 녀고도 삼사도 수가 주고 말았다 팽게도서 몽베 왕게 란젠제게 잡았다 딕샤 삼사지 된데고 소소 팽게도 삼사 현재제 잡았다 나라 경호라고도 삼사자다 로라 마쇼제 뭐 이거 니스 마시베 돈네 몽바 마리베 왕게 아니 되베 돈주베 돈도 자원 녀반 나서 왔지 자원 녀반 나서 왔지 랑게 레사도 랑게 제부 연구로 와 초거대체 유대는 두바 멤버 전에 아니 그 제가 규게 된데 초발 때는 용 되고 있는데 아니 자원 연반나 소바 제발 때는 아니 랑라다 디 바자샤 안디 깬다 저온도 아니 동행나 소바 녀셨다 즉 말도 지게 가서다 냐와라 소발 때인데 냐와도 이달라 소발 깼네 다 동행나서 냐와라 깼네 색발라 소바다 색발라 소바다 아니 냐와 깨바 동작이보다 깨바니 깨배보다 냐외 동행나 소바지 녀고에 다 뇽대치 다가제죠 뇽고에 들에 중요해서 되게 중요하다 등에 뒤 뇽알 때네 아니 랑게 돼다 비다고 되는데 죽투샤서 어다 랑게 되는데 시작해 죽도 생게 되는데 죽투샤서 죽고서 가야매 되겠지 단다야다 가서는 그 다다 가서 다 단다야 뭔가 말이베 상황도 쭉 란전적인 상황도 다가랑 하되어면도 아니 다 뒤제발 때는 오다 그 내가 야부 뒤차셔서 죽고서 제매셔 네 생각도 가야 맞아서 냠도 주세자 뭐 주면서 다 가야 뒤편도 중앙 지구샤선도 죽고서 제매 되기도 왔다던데 갑다 들려 줘야 됐어.
And so here, since beginning this time, we have had countless rebirths. And that, the way we have gone about it is that we have really simply promoted self-cherishing attitude, thinking that by going along this way of thinking, it'll be to my benefit. I'll get what I want, and that'll be beneficial for me. And so it's through that sense of kind of an ignorant attitude that we have considered everything promoted or motivated by self-cherishing has been good, that the idea of cherishing others is a waste of time and has just, getting in my way. And so this has led us in a situation where, that we neither had a clear understanding of the law of cause and effect, let alone the fact that, everything completely empty of any independent existence, and that we just created the causes to be born countless times in hell realms as hungry spirits, and this has gone on for eons of time. And if there was some good that has come out of that, there might be some justification for it, but we cannot point to even a single speck of benefit that has been brought to either ourselves or to other sentient beings on the back of that.
되게 내단데 모터 받잖아. 오다 안 단다 이내야 미류된 렌데어레 아니 최근에 저 신거 열대 또 신거 열대 이내야 냠내 제마도 왔지. 아니 제 냠내 제마도 왔잖아. 아니 저 곰베 온게야 란전전다 단지 머리 비게 아니 생화도 주네다 카답 된데스도 단다에 되는 이제 친구는 무준에 되는 제 하야를 더 탑시 가야면 누가 그러와 탑시 가야면 그러와 bên 산제 고마 더 와서 개체 잠에 숨 쏘상을 더고 개체 잠에 소는 뭐 쉬우지 여봐 소리 두대 이내 단다 먼저 토마 매반에 제대 가야 가서 유림 보지 말아 봐 유림 보지 말아 봐 다 단다이네 지 랑젠제 단지 머리베 상화도 지네 녀만에 신전 단다 치바이나 다 모두네 코데지레마도 되네 타주에 자원이네 민도가 다 오다 된데 인도 오다 된데 임바도 못트네 다 그저 녀마 치베 랑과들다 문에 전에 디 노르데샤 다 단다 밀류레 산제게 템바데 제외 갑딜라 티 구급데 심제네 다 랑젠제 숙충의 단에 현진제 야제다 녀마 랑 개침부지서 섭데 현 개침부지 그러와 녀마 다도 주바 진되게 다도 주바 진에 단다 포도 가야 중모도 다도 마주바데 게 아니 된다데 현배토나 다도 마주바 시제 안 되더라 현진제게 아니 삼로티 토네 다 가서래 저게 루브닝바텔라 삼로 땅다 사바시 루제네 보다 제거지 다 제거를 쓴 거였다.
So this is something that we must, recognize clearly, that even though we have been born again as a human being, even though we have met with the Dharma, and still it's very much like before, that we are a slave to habit, where we continue on promoting self-cherishing, promoting this idea of a truly existent self and so on. And that this can only lead to the same kind of result of continuous rebirth in the lower realms, going on and on. Even though, we kind of balk at the idea of where it says in the texts that we have to practice the Dharma for 3 countless great eons to attain enlightenment. But we give no thought to the fact of the many eons already since beginningless time that we have spent revolving in cyclic existence without any benefit to show for us whatsoever. And so therefore, and if we continue like we have been doing, there is going to be no end to it. We know that. So it's a case of really waking up, seizing the opportunity now, whereby we make a firm decision to start reducing our dependence on the self-cherishing attitude, of promoting the attitude of cherishing others, where we realize it's a mistaken attitude to continually perceive the self as something that is independently established, and to promote the idea that it cannot exist in that way. It is merely imputed by thought, etc. And so what we have to do is to kind of really turn this great ship of selfishness around, to really start promoting and creating a new habit of putting the cherishing of others to the foremost, the lack of inherent existence to the forefront, and that in this way vow to this time take the essence of this life.
가제 소발 제바이나 단대게 아니 지가소데 냠레 단대레 소바 컴투에 델레 냠레 소바제 제토나 조와 타다게 돈 주바 조와 타다게 돈 주바 용투고도 되는자 아니 가와 리바 네서다 데 가와게 관심 받은 뭐 줘봐 쟤네 지구에서 되네 되네 대장 되면라 된전 다장 되네 대장 뇌면라 되네 대장 뇌면라 된전 다장 주주래 So the
second subheading promotes this same point here, where it says that then through our being able to establish patience in the face of hardship and austerity and difficulty, that we are able to fulfill the purpose of all sentient beings, and we should delight in that. And so the verse number 75 describes this. But now, since great meaning will accrue from harm which is not even a fraction of that, I should indeed be solely joyful towards such suffering that dispels the harms of all.
어디는 다 샘제가 돈도 주베 가지에서 다 샘제가 돈도 주베 가지에서 다 배나 미지고 소소로 녀바게 바이나 녀바데 안에 가서데 녀바데라 안에 저거 컨디션 와도 맞잖아 소바고네 샘제 탐제가도 산제 고마 주베 게 아니 돈도 뒤지기 삼사지 로아다 어디데 제 아니 다가는 저 주름 소바고 준비 좀 근데 지금 임바이나 뒤잖다 아니 저 샘제 순례제 통화이나 샘제 탐제가도 산제 고마 두기 있으게 강사 뒤주체도 두기 있으게 요소 간제这个人给啥呢？通哪着呢？着呢？这个人家心情给端都嘛就没跟这个的，上路当呢，上路当真的，我的上路当的心情给端都这边，感觉第呢，第三都那方面的，我感觉让真正当这马里国想法都觉得当跑到东岸用的，对了对吧？那看当的。这个那个给我说国贸工给什么国贸工给刚才听不出面多我那的第那个要嘛的因为什么国贸工给当过来当过了刚才听不出要的第我多少个人要嘛是这种那个民啦民那把嘛是民那么第了点呢他对全部看住对全部大家住对全部个如果他的民那把嘛是那个不来呀那什么时代呢对用我想法都嘛就真的那什么时代呢刚才我冲突的对就他都对全部大家住三节恐怕就住人家9月那把7月各界定的他主要是他们这个给可是他东个那把7月各界东啦当到浪年啥搞我把戏得找的时候他第了我那张那个他 celebration 几句那他的结果也差点有的时候搞我把戏找我这说说他点的带我追去点的带我追我他因为我这把真的detail 把这我的送到或者
So here this is an exhortation to transform and to reverse our normal action. So it's to be able to accept the hardships that go along with being able to establish something great. And something great means fulfilling the purpose of sentient beings. And that the hardships can be something as clear as somebody harming us. And so that, what we're able to do now is be clear-sighted, going, okay, so I know how I used to react previously, something whereby, till now I was a beginner, had a beginner's attitude. I would simply, knee-jerk reaction, and somebody harms me, I harm them back or generate anger. But now I'm taking a whole different approach here. And so this harm is not going to be dealt with in the same old way, the same habituated way. I'm creating a new habit. So not this time. That here I'm really focusing on something far more important than just my having to deal with issues like this. I'm seeing this in a much more beneficial way of thinking, and that here will not react to that harm, and that not only that, but I realize that I have the opportunity to establish something so important, of great significance here, and that here is to eradicate this kind of austerity, is eradicating the suffering of the harm related to all sentient beings, and accepting all. I should therefore very joyfully accept such sufferings, and indeed there should be that sense of celebration around this practice.
我这在那写了偏把主事情多，写了那么几话的呀，写了偏把这个人，可是呢，对我过去出过的是呢，那讲的，现在我出过多，我那么几把个偏拖下身上我出过多，是吧？我这是偏拖那么几是的，那么几个这个偏拖的落了差不多，是吧？偏拖落了差不多，因为样，但你们就那几说呢？ 那嘛叫做偏拖下是还够多，这是，本来下回呢，你嘛没这个那几个没法吃，他偏拖个没法吃，那几个没法吃，但我是用这个偏毛到那嘛吃，因为你们就那几说呢，那嘛吃吧的偏拖还够多。 그래서 배나 나니 미디가 뇌게 매봐 이나 나니 미디가 뇌게 매봐 이나 달로 뇌게 봐 이나 나니 뇌게 요 말다 나니 팬토와 타고 뭐도 이내야 달로 뇌게 봐 인사 아 나니 뇌마게도 팬토와 타고 그도 뇌게 저러다 가자 배나 뭐저 팬토 팬마도 나에 뇌마게 쓰기로 중나 팬토스 중나 팬토 두고 먼저 나야 뇌마게 쓰기로 왔다 그러나 이나야 뇌마게 왔다가 팬토고도 가르스나 뒤근데 사고도스나 나니 뇌마게 왔다로 뇌게 와나 나니 뇌마게 왔다 팬토 하고도 오 나니 뇌게 봐서 딩갈 뇌마송 상사 뒤 팬토 되도 다 달로 된 뇌게 오르와 다 된데 임바 인자 된데 임바 인자 다 간제 지금 가자 지금 현라 뇌게소나 다 간제 지금 가서래 다 뇌게바 이나다 가서래 다 간제 다 셴마기바 소응고도 다 뇌마게바나 셴마기바 소금도 다 된데 임바 인자 거저 단데 지금 가서래 단데 된줄라 되네 좋아시라 아니 팬토 그데 팬토 두고 뭐더네 뇌마게스 뇌마게바데 팬토가 차대요레스 팬토가 차대요레스 그래서
So it's here a situation where where we are charged to really be of benefit to another, and if we cannot be beneficial towards them, then we are charged not to engage in any harm towards them. But indeed, that not harming is something which is also beneficial, and this is something that can be seen kind of from experience. So, for example, in a situation where last year you had the same relations with a person where they were neither helped or harmed, but in a situation this year where they are harmed, they can tell the difference between when they're harmed and not harmed, so that harm previously can now viewed as something which was beneficial in the past.
어디로 연구도 왔다 되네 이마에서 거저 뇌마게바데 거 팬토고도 뇌마게바데라 파저다 녀몬게 죽으면도 아니 소소래 녀몬게 그면도 팬토데샤 다 되네 이마에서 저기 중나 팬토 대마저 뇌마게에서 뇌마게바데게 팬토가 차되기도 와다데 꿀롱데 현라 팬바 주에 꿀롱고 돈에 거저 다 뇌마게바데 팬바 차되기도 어떤 공부 시제 와다데 대샤샤가 대샤
And so in terms of that harm, that lack of harm in an interaction there, even though there can be there's no overt benefit being given, it is something which is beneficial from both sides, because the motivation, the negative motivation is not generated. There's no mental affliction in play. And so it is something which is beneficial overall in that particular situation. And so therefore, that's why we have that motivation that if at all possible, be of benefit. If benefit is not possible, then definitely do not harm. So we leave it there for today.
숭디 아니 거저 럽전 제네 거저 럽전 제네 다 거저 미유의 가려서나 섬제 탐제도 산제 고마토베 인도 다들 죽다한테 근데 죽고서도 다 랑젠젠 니마 랑젠젠 개침부 지에디 찹라 셴젠젠 개침부 지에디 숙체다 당에 니마 단지 마리베 아니 지금 상황도 저도 안 단지 마리베도 숙충다 충다다네 다음에 또 베셔라기엘라 아니 배춘지에 아니 랑게 지금 다른 거저 내가 당고 할때 니마게 루부딜라 삼로 당당데 다 교화당니 삼로 당당데 교화당니 교화당전다 지가서 전진이 고도전에 니마 전진진 개침부 지가 말 란진지 개침부 지에서 다 전진지 개침부 지 란진지데 또 낭매라 샤샤지 니마 다도 마주와디 개침부 지가 요 말에 다디 뭐 주변 다도 주바잖아 다 Mutino call nearly just and a tomato be share up and don't die yang to some of danger. They shook in the Tana, Tado Madu, lot of shook to the Martin. They want to be the red one. What did it say?
And so here, the essence here is that when studying the Bodhisattva's way of life, as we are doing here, and the main objective, of course, is to get us closer to the state of enlightenment in order to be of benefit to all sentient beings. But how does that play out from day to day? It's the degree to which then we are able to reduce our self-cherishing attitude, where we are selfishly considering just our own situation, our own reality, and to be more promoting the mind which considers others, the importance of other sentient beings, and really start to bring more of that thinking and action into our lives. And indeed also with regard to the self-cherishing, self-grasping attitude of really having really not considered the way in which we think of the self as something which is objectively existent, and to really start thinking about that a great deal more, and to kind of understand that is what keeps us in cyclic existence, that particular ignorance. And so to be able to kind of think more on that, kind of loosen our grasp on that that mistaken understanding, and that to really consider that when what we are charged with here, what is really behind this is the strong exhortation to transform our thinking, and that is possible. That's something we can actually change the emphasis from self-cherishing to cherishing others, from grasping at the self like we have, to really loosening that, and to kind of really seeing it being empty of existing in that way.
And there is a rather the let and board, Kobashuk Chamboyore. Me, Luden, Sanje Temba de Chair, the Yinayang, Nar Ranches and Kombachimboyore, Tanzim Maribe, Kombachuk Chamboyore. Tameto be sure to your mare. The name was a Cotuina Nutu Togurda, Cotuina Nutu Togueta Rana, Cotuina and Kulcha Chech. Cotuina Tonache Tech. Penangozo, Pugu, Social Pugu Subu Chevayina, and the Pugu Tengozo Tatiwala Chala, the Bachama, Cotuina Tonachi. Tonachi, Tatina Shin, or near Cotuina Nutu Tosigata, something. Cotuina and a Jamba de Shishing Chetuachi. Gets what the man could do in a now I can't do the no to the only door.
And so that we must realize where we're starting from as well. Of course, we are beginners, and we have the incredibly strong habitual tendency towards the self-cherishing attitude, towards self-grasping, and so on. And that here, we have to kind of really be strongly determined to kind of really pay attention to when these strong habits are at play, whenever they arise, to be able to oppose and to transform our thinking, to really, change the emphasis in our lives. And it's like that, a child, the way a child is moving in a room that really pays attention to everything that's going on. We have to have that sense of mindfulness and alertness to also have us kind of become aware of mistaken thinking when it arises.
There is a Kadamba Lamazo Swede, Mambu Nando, Ngala Teoslav, Mambu Nando, so the Keta Nudishek the Shembo Ngala Tagores. You go to the Samla Tagores, you go to the Naga Nudu and Yaga Yomarita, some of the Tagada Jamoda, 7 Nudu and Yaga Yoinza, you go to the Samla Tes. Mambu Nando, Ngala Tes. Love just about it. Nantu. Oh, Mambu Nando, Ngala Tes, Nas and the Keta Shetra. So the Keta Nudishek the Shemodo. When amongst
that's right. The Kadamba Lamas would their kind of attitudes are when amongst the crowd, watch your mouth, watch what you're speaking. When alone, pay attention to what's going on in your mind. That's where I put my focus.
어때? 이내다 망부나도 샘라다 따고를 때 이내야 디 쇼도 나게 노지 숙제부 줘니가 여러와 디스고 여러와 주고 데데다 샘라다 나게 노지 니가 요 말이 어때서 가가
pointing out the Aquinian company. Yes, that's where the danger is, in the mouth, what you're talking about. But when alone, even though there's no danger for what's going on in the mouth, what's been spoken, but you have that mind that you have to keep an eye on.
올라서 어들자 어다 랑게 등게 난가라 라모트베 뭐 셋업 줘들 셋업 샤바들 양조 셋업 줘지 잡 어때 아니 녀바 줘 연종지 공부시 감소 좋아지 쭉 가봐 기본에 아니 배 동네를 메대 버지 공부시 안 될은 녀바 줘 연종 공부시네 된데 로데 랑게 주고 뼈마다 제지라 요소소서 아니 지난 거저 컨데 주변에 유대의 주바도 뒤상 요 말에서 코다 줘봐 삼로다 아니 된대게 예배 로데 아니 님의 경우 약한 와제 아니 빼매도 내수 섬사자 심지어 탐제거도 산제 공부 요원요 마다 탑도 토바 지기 삼사제 공부시 된대게 돈바데 다의 경우 약한 와제 교네 빼매 가서 님의 경고기 때문에 내수 반제자와 라마를 보지 다게 주어 빼매도 가지고 구소투 정보를 짜도서 순대전에 담배 가서 배 니베 가서 쇼 숨어 때도서 산제 공부 마다 제수수 가고
And so we begin the dissolution by again focusing on both the figure in front in our merit fields and also on our crown, where we are established a suitable seat. And so here this begins through reflecting on the renunciation, how all of the 6 realms of existence are in the nature of suffering, and we need to definitely emerge from that state to gain liberation. And that is that mind of renunciation is symbolized by the lotus mandala seat on our crown, and that all inner and outer phenomena lack any objective existence. They are merely imputed by thought, and just focusing on the mere absence of the object of negation is symbolized by the view of emptiness, which is symbolized by the sun mandala disc on our crown. And that then leads into our being able to motivate to attain the state of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. The mind of enlightenment, which is symbolized by the moon disc. And then we issued the invocation verse, "O glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and moon seed placed here on my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind." And with the first recitation, the figure moves from the space in front. And then with the second, they arrive at our pre-prepared seat. And at the end of the third, we have the certainty that they are established there and will remain there until we attain the state of enlightenment. We rejoice in this fact.
중국 워스 간제제 야라도 멘데다 저 베타 치게도 가이 좀 삼로 돈에 가 땅에서 같이 야라도 멘데다 저 사실 이단 거를 남들라가 니한다야 미쳐 어디는지 다데네 양조 년종 지고 년종 지고네 랑닝 대표마다 된데 로딩 닝 배마다 제 교수 서서서 아니 제 지난 거 저 간제제의 유대는 좀 또장 요 말서 코다 줘봐 유대는 줘봐 이봐 이나 그 때는 중당 요만 때는 중원도 그 다들 거 유대는 줘봐도 뒤삼에 다들 된 거여서 동반이 그 앞에 강투도 그 삼로 있다네 근데 저 각자 가정들 셈샤 아니 된대게 녜베 로디 아니 가서데 님의 기본 약간 어제 다외던 내 소삼사체 그것도 권다 빼매 님 빼마 답게 되도 내 소사데 심지어 탐제거도 산제 고반 요원도 마다나 타면도 산사백 공부시 안 되는 두바데 다이진 거 약간 어제 님의 내 소삼사 빨리 저 라마로 다기 님가 빼매도 그런 구순도 좀 우주 써도 순대적 담배 가서 님의 거서 숨어 때도 산제 고반 마도 제 소소 공부시 되는 님 빼마 답게 남주님 내다는 시 네가 도지 가고 생각 봐서 가게 뒤 타고도 되면서 다도 뭐는 마서 리버스 거데 되네 주주 자매한 것은 엄마라 봐서 나티티스 되네 된데 그나 어머 얘다 많이 돈 너무 샤만에서 되네 리버스 거데 어디는 좀 공부시
And so then we make the offering of the 7 limbs of practice and the mandala offering. and endeavor to really, make this a meaningful point of practice, not just saying the words. And then we, from there, we begin the arrangement of a suitable seat at our heart center to invite the Guru Buddha down to our association. This is in the nature of suffering and really needing to attain liberation from that state of suffering, and that in turn is symbolized by the lotus mandala seat. How all inner and outer phenomena lack any objective existence, they're merely imputed by thought, and going through that meditation to get to the mere absence of the object of a negation, and from that is established the sun mandala disc on our at our heart center, and that then facilitating the notion that we can quickly really motivate. The invocation verse, O glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed here at my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness, bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first recitation, the figure moves down through a crown chakra, down through our central channel. At the end of the second, they arrive at the pre-prepared seat at our heart center. And at the end of the third, again, we have that certainty that they will remain with us until fold over and are sealed at their tip by a white 5-pronged semi-vajra. And then that whole package is surrounded by 3 mantras, the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha in a clockwise direction, the mantra of Manjushri in an anti-clockwise direction, and the mantra of dependent origination again in a clockwise direction.
Oda an rang ning yuso lama shaja sang never di kusong to le we se pa do me ba rang chi bo ne kan de ko pha do we se cho ba la ten ne ane thoma me ba ne di ba je de kya ba do ya ta ka je ji ka so le 미게 주본 거 주든 like 단계와 제대로 생각만 토만 매반에 저 다까지 제발 간다 보다 라제 간다 봐 내가 거기 사요 벌 장치다 다가니 지금 쏟아고 돈받을 거 장주스면 나와다 거 상하 단체다 거라 소베 아니 지금 가서 돈받을 단체다 겨와다 제대로 생각 토만에서 뒤받을 마 자네 또나 지금 가서래 다들 가서다 타바다 탐지 준비게네 두배니 계속 주배다 니동 그래서 마 장치 다수 상서 어떤데 공부시 다가니 지금 아니 지금 가서다 가서데 최주발라 류된데 야고고도 랑글 다 류긴나자 생게 동에 중시 코만이 와 자롱티레 견커데 저벌 봐 장치 다네 라도도 뉴도 산제 고마토발라 안 타메게 나제 견치시 타메게 나제 견타 장네 가나 탄자 다바바시 다바람자 바시 차도 봐 야고 중수 서 고마시.
And so then light rays begin to emanate from the heart center of the Guru Buddha within the lotus petals and permeating through those petals and indeed through every cell of our body from the crown of the head to the soles of the feet, and thereby purifying all of negativities that we have accumulated since beginning this time, including all the negativities associated with this life, the one previous to this and previous to that, etc. All of the negativities associated with not abiding in the 10, the ethics of avoiding the 10 non-virtues, the naturally occurring negativities and those proscribed by the Buddha, the kind of vows that we have taken on, be it the Pratimoksha or the Bodhisattva or the Tantric vows, any infractions and downfalls of those vows, all of the negativities that we have engaged in through disrespect to our gurus, and all of the negativities associated with illness and sickness in the body, and indeed in the mind also being the obstacles to our being able to engage in Dharma practice smoothly and efficiently, and to also to rectify any impurities within the elements of the body, and the imbalances within the channels, the winds and drops of the subtle body, and that they are all aligned again perfectly, and that in particular that we can counter the major obstacle to our being able to quickly attain the state of enlightenment, being how do you say, the holding on to the kind of impure reality, or the ordinary appearance, and that this is transformed into something that we're able to see with pure appearance.
So the Shinto Travel Assembly, the Lama Shaja to the Lenji, so the assembly Lama Shaja to the Jus, Rangel Lunga, Lama Shaja Kuzu to Mo, Yema Jusu, so the tea, the water, the weapon, but the Tonis Shikasu, substance. Rangel Nesa, Net and New Gyantanja, Lama Shaja Singing, and Tabish to Jusu, something. Ran Lama Shaja Singing, the Kuzu to Mo, Yema Juva, the Nala Rashima, but some of the Tugale, Lama Shaja Singing, Simjing Chana number 20, and Simja Red Lama Shaja Singing, Chasa already Shualatene, the Data Lama Shaja Singing, Kuzun to the War Yemekusa, the Dagan Nesagan, and near the Data Jagan, New Gyantanja, Lama Shaja Singing, Tabish to Kusu. That's Simja Tamjagan to the Sanje Kumbar Jugins, Tanima didn't do so no Kawako. And the Simja Tamja Sanje Salakoba, teach the Susi Kawaka Tuba, did to go Soto Chavaka, you didn't to do some young mother. And Tombati, and the Dewate, they were Tombata, the Nismo Ishikasu, so what the Kumacha.
So this being able to overcome our ordinary appearance, which is basically our predilection for, judging everything as good and bad and wrong and right and so on, and that to transform this into pure appearance is quite important. And then through the combination of my own most subtle wind acting as the substantial cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of a Buddha. And then through the combination of my own most subtle mind or consciousness acting as the substantial cause, together with the consciousness of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind of consciousness is transformed into the enlightened mind of a Buddha. And I see myself, my body, speech, and mind now as inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of a Buddha. I rejoice in this, and then the place I am in also is transformed into the pure realm of a Buddha, of an enlightened being. Then seeing myself as a fully enlightened being and realizing I'm lacking in any inherent existence, I send out light rays from my own heart center, equal in number to all the sentient beings in all the realms of existence. And as the light rays touch them and enter into them, they are completely purified and arise as fully enlightened Buddhas. The places that they are in are also relieved of all taint and fault and rise as fully enlightened Buddha realms. And then realizing here then that I have today fulfilled the goal of leading all sentient beings to that state of enlightenment. This is something that is so wonderful, and I rejoice in that. I see that this leading of all sentient beings to the state of enlightenment, the merit that has facilitated that, and myself as the agent of that merit, all completely empty of inherent existence and merely imputed by thought. And that it brings forth a sense of bliss, which combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness.
뭐다서 뭐다 단단 어저 삼로다는데 몇번 이직을 운에 걸어 대대 레벨부터 요 말인데 얘네야 단다 뒤 아니 다 그서 개인 제제네 다 뉴도 산제 고마도 아니 주로 교와 쇼스다 주에게 아니 가서다 단 된대 중앙라 심지다 산제 고마 대체도 돈이 이제 님부저 남규라 끼고 여기서 다 랑게 제 대화 중에 동네 중에 전화 년나 되나 사나 다 가자 개나 타마 시와 예바이네 대다 단자 돈이 이제 뭐 제가 남규라 끼베 아니 깨도 교와 쇼스다 깨도 교와지 예 지금 제누바 쇼 제누바 라마샤자스 그 징글랍도 소단데 고마 자 어디서 고아지
And so, of course, we're operating at the level of aspiration and imagination here. But of course, we dedicate so that what we are simply picturing here may become a reality as quickly as possible, and that I may be able to really see all conditions as conducive conditions for establishing causes that lead to this state, to that state of enlightenment. And that means that I am forever maintaining a sense of the emptiness of inherent existence and compassion, the mind of enlightenment itself, in my mindset, in my perception, regardless of whatever situation I'm in, whether it's good and bad or indifferent, or I'm sick, even at the point of death. And may I just see that all of these conditions become conducive conditions for me to lay down the causes to reach that state of enlightenment for the benefit of all.
어딘데 삼로당 아니 소소 제토에 배준제 아니 배준제는 제토가 이나 다 약고 쉬우셔도 게 제토도 삼사제 삼로당제네 어딘데 제게 좀 이봐 어딘데 제
And what's important that on the back of making such strong statements and to really kind of gain that sense of yes, we can attitude. Yes, it's possible to be able to do this, to encourage oneself to be going. Yes, it is possible to be able to attain such a state, to really transform the mind at this level. It is possible. That's important.
대체와 있는 아니 소소 니마 타마니가 돈 니마데 아니 지금 잠니 장주서 돈이 또 싫어게 아니 공배투에 튕겨라 자투와 있나 자투와는 다 미닝풀 잡아라 다 되네 용도와 단단해 섭다지 마소나 섭다지 차기 말이.
And so that if we can really start to train the mind in this way, and then at the, make that effort, and at the very last moment of life, at the verge of death, that we can bring the mind to bear on the mind of enlightenment itself, on compassion, on the emptiness of inherent existence. That would be so meaningful and so important. But we have to really start from this point. If we don't, then we won't have that at that time.
단단해 섭다 셰프지 소마도나 디캅레 셰프지 연구 말이야 섭다지 소마도나.
So it's really, we have to kind of like really form that mind from here on in. Otherwise, we won't have that stability at that time of death.
어디는 참 올라서 개완디 온돈다 라마사예 조조네 로제야마르바
You are Avalokiteshvara, a great treasure of compassion, not aimed at true existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception, Sankapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows, Losang Drakpa at your feet and make requests.
Lasso, no, touch it. Thank you. Thank you, no.
Thank you, General.
Thank you. Thank you.
So long, guys.
Take care. Everyone,
Take
take
care.
care.
Thank you, Geshe. Thank you.
Thank you.